Now, this leads us to our next conversation, because the issue of police and elections cannot be detached, because we still have a lot of happenings during the election period that's very fresh on our minds. The Electoral Commission, regardless of the number of injunctions that sought to stop it from going ahead with the limited voter registration exercise, actually started on Tuesday. Now, there are two private individuals who went to court seeking to injunct the process. That's Mercy Agbenoto and Precious Ayita. After the process started, the lawyers of Precious Ayita now sought to cite the EC chair and her two deputies for contempt. For the past three instances, they've tried to serve them personally, because a lawyer, in this case, the contempt suit has to be served personally on the respondents. Nick Samoa is private legal practitioner who is the counsel for Ayita Precious. As we go on, he's going to be joining us. He says they've been unsuccessful in serving Jane Adokwe Mensah and Dr. Bosman Asari, and then Mr. Tete as well. We are receiving, in fact, a letter just this morning. We just received a letter from the Electoral Commission chair's lawyers indicating that the EC chair and her two deputies have waived off their personal rights of receiving this contempt suit. So the lawyers have now been given that right to be served on behalf of the EC chair and her two deputies. This is how things have played out till now. Dr. Jonas Kwapong, you are CDD even before this, these two private individuals and then the NDC and 5 other political parties went to court. You had raised concerns about the decision by the EC to do the registration at its district offices only. What are those concerns that you put out there?
So thank you very much, Alfred. And you and I had this conversation earlier on during the week. I've always maintained that I understand the constitutional role and the constitutional prerogative of the Electoral Commission. It is guaranteed certain powers over the course of the Fourth Republic. One of the things that the EC as an institution regularly holds on very dearly to is this idea of independence. You know, I think it was Dr. Farijan who once said that the Constitution is my boss, right? And so they fiercely guard that independence, which, I mean, it does make sense, right? That you want to make sure that you play the role of a fair and impartial arbiter going into this. But one of the things I've also constantly raised is that the EC as an institution is currently operating under a cloud of a low level of trust. If you look at the most recent Afrobarometer survey in 2022, which means that any of its actions or inactions, right or wrong, or well-intended, gets filtered through some of that quote-unquote overall low level of trust that generally individuals are tending to have in the institution, which means that it has to keep an eye, or at least in my opinion, I believe that they have to weigh some of their actions against the extent to which it reinforces that low level of trust being captured in Afrobarometer, or it, you know, restores some of that trust. Then on the other hand, you have the voters who have a fundamental right to vote. And I've always argued that because that right to vote is very fundamental. Now, as to whether the citizen would exercise that right or not, it still doesn't prevent the institution that has the authority and responsibility in organizing and putting in processes and procedures so that the citizen can exercise that vote. Your goal is always to remove as many impediments or burdens from the voter to ensure that they can exercise this fundamental right. Which is why earlier on in the week I said to you, what would it hurt if you can have these voter registration exercises closer to the voter, right? You have the smallest unit closer to the voter, which is always the polling station, for example, right? Because again, you want to reduce the burden on the voter to be able to enjoy and exercise this right. But because there's always this tension between this idea of our independence, how we want to organize these processes, then the courts also come in. And again, if you keep looking at Afrobarometer over 9 rounds, generally we don't tend to trust institutions very well. And it's sort of, going further down. And so you also have the courts who then have to play this, arbiter role between the decisions of the EC and how the various parties in our elections view these things, whether it's a voter, whether it's a political party. And so you bring in the courts. And I've regularly said that there are some things that I sometimes hope that we don't always have to keep running to the courts, right? I keep wondering, are there some of these issues, can we resolve them using administrative processes? So can the EC, through its administrative processes, working in conjunction, for example, with the political parties, resolve some of these things without us having to always run to the courts? And then it's also, you also realize that it is also not always that the courts hear these things in a timely manner, right? For whatever reason. So you think about this injunction thing against the, what the EC is trying to do with regards to this limited voter registration exercise. They've scheduled the hearing for much later, by which time the intended action that these voters or representatives are raising issue with that would have already passed. And I say to myself, so what if an injury is caused in the process? What do you do? Because the action that I'm trying to injunct is already complete. If an injury is caused, I've already suffered it. And then what do I do? How do you retroactively, fix those things? So for me, I think when you look at, the convolution of all of these, issues, you want to go into an election with the ordinary voter having as much confidence in all of the institutions that will be playing a key role in ensuring that we can all walk away at the end of the day believing that, not just the outcome, but even the process leading to the outcome was fair to all of the parties involved.
This decision by the EC, how does it impact on the public confidence in it and for it going into election 2024?
You see, I worry that it may chip away at that confidence and trust, right? Because I don't think it's an unreasonable request that is being made where individuals, the political parties are saying, if you think of distance between the voter, and the district office, etc., is there something that you can, do about it? It may not mean that you have to open registration centers throughout every single polling station in a given district or a constituency. But can you make some concessions that says, okay, in addition to the district office, we may, open maybe 3, 4, 5 other centers to facilitate this process? Again, for me, because I'm increasingly worried about the level of trust in our institutions, I say that the obligation to restore trust in our institutions is on the institutions themselves. And every so often, I think they have to look at their actions and say, okay, what are the things that I can reasonably do within the confines of the law that would help restore some of that faith and trust that I want my citizens that I serve, to have in me. And some of these requests are not, for me, are not unreasonable. Maybe for logistic reasons, you may not be able to extend registration to every single polling station in the constituency like you do on an election day. But can you have maybe 5, 6 other centers? The thing, though, that I would commend the political parties is that even though they have issues with the way it is being organized, I'm also happy that they are organizing their constituencies and finding ways to get them to the district offices, you know, to get this resolved, which at least for me says, regardless of the difficulties, we would participate in the process whilst we also challenge it, you know, because you don't want a situation where then, you know, there's a boycott and all of those things, because we need this level of participation, you know, to keep this democracy going and saving this democracy.
Lawyer Martin Kpebu, to your mind, I mean, what would the EC lose if it considers the concerns raised by individuals and political parties about limiting the registration to its district offices alone? Because since the process started, here's what we've monitored: network challenges that has led to delays. In fact, in Asokore Mampong, in the Ashanti region, people had to pass the night in queues because some of them were coming from very far away locations. So instead of going back and coming the next day, they decided to rather stay in the queue, sleep, pass the night.
Can you imagine?
Finish before traveling back to where they came from.
Yeah.
What would the EC have lost?
So, Mr. Okanse, superficially, on the face of it, you'll be, somebody who is not cognizant of everything may think that the EC would lose face. But that is not it. Far from it. We can't say the EC is going to lose face, because it was always clear from day one that they had got it wrong. I mean, till date, I just look at it, sometimes I'm like, wow, is that Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana? And we've been quiet. You see why the EC's actions that are saying they should do the registration at only the district offices of the EC smacks of voter suppression? Because I've been turning it around in my head over and over, and it just doesn't make sense to me. This is one thing that, listen, even if we didn't have money and we cried to our development partners, they will help us. So for me, this particular decision of the EC to restrict the registration to only their district offices is one that defies logic and any other, criteria that will move our democracy forward. Yes, it's one that totally throws us back. It's as if we are in a dictatorship. Yeah, that's the way the EC is behaving. Very dictatorial. When what they are saying is totally wrong. Totally wrong. Last week, you hear what we mentioned it from some of the towns. There was an example from Bole, an example around Bole, that from one town to the registration center is about 130 kilometers, yes, right?
From Bole to, I think,
Bamboy
to Bamboy.
Very good. Bole to Bamboy, 130 kilometers. Then we got one example from Breniasi, right, to Nkwanta, 43 kilometers. There are other examples, the Precious Aita case,
yes,
where that place to the EC, you know, so much, so much. So it defies logic. And so it tells you that if the EC eats humble pie and does the needful by increasing the numbers to all the electoral areas, that will be perfect for our democracy. That will be perfect. Anything short of this, it will always be very clear that the EC is actively engaged in voter suppression. And that's what we cannot countenance. Because, look, this country doesn't belong to the EC. No, this country doesn't belong to the EC. And so Ghanaians have to get up. And sometimes I even wonder, so, you know, one thing that is always been okay to me, look, you see, we are also partly to blame. Where citizens won't engage much, apart from talking privately, this is what you get. I mean, sometimes we even forget who we are. The name Ghana, how many of us remember or even know the meaning of it? The name Ghana, what does it mean? Because if you look at our actions, do we look like warriors? Do we look like warriors? Yeah, that's what Ghana means, the warrior king. Do we act as warriors? The EC is bullying us and we are quiet. EC is bullying us and we are quiet because of our selfish aims. Look, if we, very soon I will be campaigning that let's just change the name Ghana because we don't act one bit like warriors. No, we don't. Because this is blatant constitutional aberration. Yeah, what Dr. Kwapon said. I mean, we all want to see citizens participate. We want citizens to engage. Let the citizens register. So when you restrict the registration to registration centers, what are you doing? If not voter suppression, what else is it? Especially in the context of the EC law, the CI 91, which actually even stipulates that the registration must be continuous. So what have we done since we had CR 91? Let's go to Regulation 9.
So Regulation 9, I think 3031.
So let's go. So even there are today, the 3031 is the annual one. We are not. I'm not interested in that. The so continuous 9, Regulation 9.
Regulation 9. It talks about the Commission shall register voters on a continuous basis.
Excellent. 2.
The Commission shall, in consultation with registered political parties, determine the modalities for the continuous registration of voters. It's going to be on the screen right now. And 3. The Commission may, by notice in the Gazette, specify a period during which the registration of voters shall take place, or review the original period set aside for registration. And the Commission shall include in the register of voters, goes on the names of the persons qualified and so on. And then there's another regulation that talks about the places where these registration takes place. This is Regulation 2B of CI 91.
Yes.
In designating a place as a registration center, the Commission shall take into consideration A, the suitability of the place for use as a polling station on election day, and the accessibility of the place to prospective applicants for registration. And clearly, with what we are saying...
Yes. So that's it. It's a continuous. So easy. Madam Jim Mensah, answer. When was the last time you did continuous registration? When was the last time you did continuous registration? And so if you haven't done it all this one, then you have one opportunity to do it. Why won't you do it well? Why won't you do it well? Why? Is it the issue of personal property? Is it a private company you are running? This is Professor Bosman Asare. Is it a private company? Because the things they're doing just shows that they are all incompetent. Me, look, I'm not surprised. When Madam Mensah was being appointed, I said it. Those days, Joy FM, I said, look, this one is not competent. Me, I had asked. I asked around everywhere. I never heard anything positive that she was a competent person. I mean, and I knew it. So I'm not surprised that this came. And I voiced it those days when she was going to be appointed. I said, look, this woman is not competent. It's just a chronism. She's related a bit to the First Lady. You see, so that's the connection. Related to the First Lady. So this chronism, family and friends business. You remember President Kufuor, oh, I'm not coming to do family and friends. No, knowing he was coming to increase family and friends to another level altogether and to make his family very rich, right? Through the Ken bonds and all those things. So Madam Jim Mensah's track record had always been there as an incompetent person, and she brought into the EC office. And so you remember even in 2016, in the run-up to appointing Charlotte Osei, Gabi Ochiridaku was very clear that, listen, why don't we open up the, what do you call it?
The appointment process.
The appointment process. Let people apply. Then they'll be vetted in public so that everybody will see. Then we'll check their track record so that we'll have a competent EC, an EC chairperson who will exude confidence. An EC chairperson who will exude confidence. A chairperson who has a strong track record. You remember even when the Nigerian professor came, Professor Jega, Atahiru Jega.
Yes.
The NDC, they had their own private. They decided not to allow Charlotte Osei to meet Professor Jega, right? Yeah, we're not happy. Honorable Sweeney, you see how politicians, that's why I keep saying, look, these politicians, and me, I keep saying it. Catholic Church, all the churches, chief imam, people come together and give us a candidate to rival Honorable Sweeney's. No, because they take us for granted. Because this in the EC is done, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense.
Let me go to Professor Ransford Jampo and I'll come to Alasan Sweeney.
No problem. Martin, unfortunately, Martin, today I'm having to be disagreeing with you.
Yes,
why?
Go ahead.
You have your... yes.
Go ahead.
I worked with Jim Mensah for 14 years.
Yes.
You cannot doubt her competence.
Right. Me too. I've asked people. I've also asked people.
Let me make my point. Please, let me make my point.
Go ahead. Yes.
You are lucky I'm not in the studio. Please, I worked with Jim Mensah for 14 years. I will tell you, it was Jim Mensah. I'll boldly flaunt it. It was Jim Mensah who trained me.
Oh.
She was the one who brought together the political parties' representation in Parliament to discuss issues of national importance in an apolitical manner for 10 years. In fact, it was she and her own initiative that led to the first call for constitution review. under the IEA Ghana Political Parties program that she led, I mean, it brought a lot of successes to Ghana's democracy. So, as for her competence, I cannot sit as part of a program to allow anyone to doubt it. She's a very competent person. It, however, appears that political appointments have their own way of either, so when you are given a political appointment, you must either reform the system or the system itself would reform you. And that one, I may want to believe that maybe ever since she went to to chair the commission, certain things that we were expecting would have happened are not happening in a way and manner that we all expect. One is about this voter registration. Another is about the quest to assert the mandate of the commission vis-a-vis the complaints and comments of the people who are supposed to be affected by the exercise of the mandate of the commission. Now, this is it. Hello, am I on air?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah, this is it. This is it. When I was doing my MPhil, Master of Philosophy in Political Science, I remember I went to do a study in the Mfantsiman district titled The SHRAJ, i.e. the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and Access to Justice in the Mfantsiman district. One of the factors that was blocking access to justice was the location of the SHRAJ office in Saltpom, my hometown. Now, it was difficult for people in Ekumpuano, Moto, Nakwa, and other hinterlands within the Mfantsiman district to drive or to move from their hinterlands to the district capital, Saltpom, to complain about human rights abuse. So anytime their rights got abused, they resorted to Fama Nyame, and they didn't report. You went to ask them, and they told you that, look, where the commission is located is too far. And so if you ask people to be registering at the district level without taking cognizance of the fact that many of them live in rural hinterlands, many of them are not able to afford 3 square meals a day. And so they would not find the transportation to be able to move themselves from their hinterlands to wherever the district is. If you don't take cognizance of these things, then indirectly you would be engaged in an act of voter suppression. Now, this is it. There's been several studies that support the assertion that the Electoral Commission at the moment suffers from severe trust and legitimacy deficit. Several, apart from Afrobarometer, several studies support it. Now, what worries me is that it appears that the commission itself that is suffering from these challenges is either not interested in dealing with them or isn't doing much to address these challenges. Now, when these challenges are perpetuated, then they will create problems for our democracy. Their mandate becomes meaningless, their mandate becomes offensive to the people, and then it will create problems for all of us. You do not go addressing the issue of legitimacy and trust deficit by overly hyping your mandate as against doing things that brings on board people. And it appears that the Electoral Commission from 1992 has been plagued with this challenge, and chair upon chair has not been able to do anything to address. So it's been difficult. But the point is, so the commission itself either is unwilling to address the challenge or hasn't done or is not doing much to address the challenge. The courts are not helping because they will give judgments or they will set dates for ruling in a manner that would ensure that nothing will be achieved. I mean, the ruling will not come in a timely manner. So if the Electoral Commission will not do it, if the court will not help, what do? I agree with Martin Kpebu that it appears that we are still a docile people when it comes to some of these things. If the court will not do it, certainly the president can't do it. If the EC is not listening to the political parties, and if the EC itself is not willing to address these challenges, what do we do as a people? Ghana belongs to all of us. And so we must all rise up and act. Otherwise, when there is an implosion, guess what? The heads of these institutions, the presidents, the top political party leaders, they are already guaranteed visas, and they have already they have their tickets, or they have the resources to be able to purchase tickets. They would fly out of the country and leave us, and we will suffer.
The airport will be the first place to be attacked. When the runway is not working, they will see how they will fly.
Are you round up for me? Yes.
No, but Martin Kpebu, this one I will allow you to make that input. But the point is that it is sad that look, I know who Mrs. G. Mensah is. With my 14 years of experience working with her at the IE, I cannot doubt her competence. Boss Manasari was my mate in Legon. He was my mate. He was my mate in Legon, and then he was my colleague in the Department of Political Science. I wouldn't say that they both are incompetent, but I would urge them to bring their competence to bear in handling their duties as EC bosses, because it appears that rather than bringing much reform, particularly in the area of flipping up the trust and creating more legitimacy for the institution, I think they have not done well. And doing so is not about going on to continuously hype or emphasize your mandate to the neglect of concrete efforts that we have to put in place to bring all on board. If all are not brought on board, then we are heading for trouble. And when there is, anytime trouble occurs, it will affect all of us, and they would not also have the opportunity to continue to occupy their seats as EC bosses.
Very important point. Professor Ranso Jampo, thank you. Now, Richard Ayagba, can you hear me?
That registration for
Hello?
Yes, Alfred, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, good. Now, so for you as a major stakeholder in this process, as a political party, in fact, the party in power, looking at the concerns that have come up now, I mean, it's quite evident, even before the EC started this process, individuals had raised concerns about the challenge, the difficulty they would have in accessing these registration centers at the EC's district offices. The EC has gone ahead to start the process regardless. Now these challenges are actually becoming evident and quite clear. The network challenges affecting the process as well, and some people have had to even pass the night at registration centers because of the distance they have to travel from their places of residence to the EC's district office. It is not just the NDC or the other political parties' concern, but for you as a party, shouldn't you be concerned about this as well? That this is posing a challenge to eligible voters who could be disenfranchised?
Yeah, certainly, Alfred. Thank you very much. I was a bit concerned about some of the angles that were taken by my good Professor Jampo and Martin Kpebu, as usual, in suggesting that the EC lacks legitimacy. I don't quite get that. They are legitimately appointed. They are doing their work. I mean, the issue of trust we can talk about. Martin Kpebu's suggestion of Gabon will happen in Ghana. I think these are very, inflammatory languages that we should not encourage in our public discourse. We can make the point without going that far. But the point I want to make is that the EC's rather, perceived trust issue, or maybe trust issue verified in empirical study, is as a function of political bastardization of the Electoral Commission, which includes my own political party and the NDC. And the reason is not malice. The reason is essentially to ensure that they are moderating the process that leads to the selection of leaders from this assembly all the way to the presidential level. So they are in the arena. They are at the heart of our democracy. Any election management board, after if you take the time to study across the world, in Africa, they are always caught up in public crosshairs. The discussions about them is always not as though that they are safe. The discussion always is that they have to do something right. They are not doing something right. So it is not new, this conversation, because when Madame Charlotte was there, the conversation didn't change much. Then you were having input from the New Patriotic Party calling for certain reforms and things that need to be done so that public confidence in the electoral management body of our country will be assured. Also, now the NDC in opposition to the extent they have completely abstained from IPAC. It is also designed to ensure that the EC is pushed to maintain the middle lane. So these issues would not go away from us. They would remain. And so we should not then, on the basis of that, get to the point where we are saying that the EC is so battered. And at a point, I want to agree with Professor Jampo to say that Martin Kpebu, in describing Madame Jean Mensa and her other two deputies, has gone too far and probably need to apologize for that. You cannot, in good conscience, say that these individuals who in private life have excelled, in private life accomplished in their individual capacities, to then want to, because they are managing our election body, describe them in those terms. I think that is most unfortunate. I would not say that about Martin Kpebu, and I don't think that he should be saying that about other people. But you see, Alfred, what I think we should do as a country, and I in particular reference to what is happening now. I am in the Volta region. I've been here for some days. That's the reason I couldn't join you in the studio. Yesterday, I've been to about 5 polling centers or registration centers. And in these 5 centers that I visited yesterday, I took time to have conversation with the district directors. And every one of them that I spoke to demonstrated that they are committed to ensuring that people come in and they register them hurriedly. The challenges they have explained. And I spoke to people who have come there to register. Their pain, you can see. They have challenges coming in, and then they are not able to register. They go home and having to come tomorrow and the rest of it. But you see, it has not taken away the right of people to register. People are going through the process because, look, citizenship is not a passive. It's not a passive thing. It's an active call. So citizens are taking the burden, given the challenges that is posed to them, are going through the processes to register. In one of my conversations with the regional director, Mr. Eric Japasu, we explored so many issues, talking about the network challenges, talking about availability of equipment. Can you have more? Is there a way that we can, be creative in ensuring that people can get these registrations done hurriedly and quickly? In one of the centers, finally, before the end of the day in Pando, for example, the director, the district director indicated to me what they have done. When people are coming and then they're about to shut down, I think around 5 o'clock, the online system goes down, and then they can register up to 6 to when daylight is not available because of capturing of the images. They go ahead to complete the forms for the individuals. And on the basis of that, they are able to then quickly process them the following day.
I see.
So they are learning.
Mr. Agba, you say, now you are there in the region. You've come face to face with these challenges that were talked about even before the process started, that some people have had to travel long distances to register, even at the places that you say you are, and then the network challenges that you have experienced and all. This process is going on within a particular period. And so considering the economic situation and the fact that some people that you said you've interacted with have to travel long distances, the inconvenience, and the fact that the EC is supposed to ensure that the places where the registration is taking place is accessible to eligible voters. Wouldn't you also consider the concerns raised not just by the NDC, but other political parties and private citizens about how this decision by the EC could lead to disenfranchising eligible voters, the challenges that you have also come face to face with?
Okay, so we need to disassociate a lot of things from the comments. What I was trying to establish for you is that practically there are challenges because of the distances involved. But that does not take away the fact that as a political party, as a citizen, we don't engage the process to get registered. There are two different issues. The issue is in Article 43, has the mandate to ensure that Ghanaians are registered, right? So in ensuring that registration, I think that the EC has provided the opportunity for people to go ahead with their registration. So the mandate on Article 45, the EC is executing that quite. And the only challenge we have is that, okay, well, why can we do it even closer to the people? Well, look, Alfred, if you take the registration to polling station, okay, we've been in this process for quite a bit, and you know this. People still have concerns. There are still challenges even coming to register at a polling station. So those challenges will never be completely resolved. You will have challenges even if you are registering at a community a bit about 200 meters or 1 kilometer away. The point, what we must emphasize, is that the EC continuously must look at how we can make our registration smarter. You know, when Martin was speaking, he talks about CI 91, Regulation 9 specifically. This is what we must strive toward as a people. How do we operationalize that so that we don't get to a point where we have this mass registration and necessarily that is the only window people have to register? Can we gradually get to a point where when people turn 18, whatever the issues are, we can finalize it so between the issue political parties arrive at a certain workable solution to then be able to allow people on a daily basis, when they turn 18, they can just go there and get themselves registered. What would help us, and I think that the National Identification Authority is working at that spiritedly, is to ensure that all Ghanaians get the Ghana card, which is a primary document that most people who come there would have to be able to go and register without any doubt that you are a Ghanaian.
Okay.
So once you are bearing, let me conclude for you. So once you have a Ghana card, there is an incontrovertible fact that you are a Ghanaian, and then you can go and register.
Okay.
So yesterday, in most of the places that I went to, that if you look at the ratio, you look at the ratio of those who have the Ghana card and those who have the are there to be guaranteed for, is disproportionate. A lot of the people who came are not bearing the Ghana card.
And that's another challenge as well,
yes,
indeed.
Yes. So the point I am making is that
while you round up.
Yes, so there are substantial issues that we must talk about, which is a part of administrative implementation and strategy to be able to resolve them. But let's not just put the EC down and say the EC has not done well and therefore is by malice trying to disenfranchise people.
Okay.
It's working within the constraints it has, and as a political party, we have a problem with that. But we are managing it, and I think the NDC have met the original chairman secretary yesterday. They are also managing the process and getting
I see.
people.
Thank you. Well, it just had to put it on record that you also had challenges with the process, but you didn't make that quite clear, at least with the NDC and the other political parties. They spoke about it, and it appeared that you sort of were supporting the Electoral Commission every step of the way, even when some of the processes they had put in place was going to lead to disenfranchising people. But Alasan Sweeney, let me bring you on. Mr. Agba, thank you. I would come to you on yes.
Yeah, Alfred, I think that now that the Electoral Commission has begun this process, it is important that when we are having these conversations, we do so without the bias that we are associated with. Because people are experiencing what many of us predicted even before the exercise began. And so I think that the Electoral Commission of Ghana has simply gone rogue. They have simply gone rogue, putting our democracy yet again under threat. And we need to call them out before it is too late. And you see, as much as I blame the Electoral Commission leadership, the commissioners, I cannot help but also blame the appointing authority. In this case, the president and his government. I, like you, could not, at the time of even the appointments, understand what went into the consideration for these people to be appointed. I mean, one, Madam Jane Mensah consistently at the IEA was always at loggerheads with the NDC. So one would have thought that any good governance, approach would have, considered her nomination, or even if she was recommended, with some pinch of salt. Not because she's not competent, but perhaps because of her history with the major political party that you are going to entrust the refereeing of a game. You should have known this. But you see, the president, in my view, and his government have simply corroded and corrupted every, conceivable good governance architecture that we have in this country. They have done that. I mean, talk about the judiciary, talk about the Electoral Commission, talk about CLOSAC. I mean, for the first time, you have people in the civil service and public service holding press conferences to complain about how government is not allowing them to do their job because they bring people on contract from their private institutions to take their jobs. So they have simply, corroded and corrupted every conceivable good governance architecture that we have in this country. And that is the reason why we need to speak out. Because these things are threatening our democracy. And if you look at countries that have suffered coups, in fact, Ghana is part of it, the examples are there. Coups don't just happen in a week or a day. It is the accumulation of these frustrations that eventually leads to a coup that becomes so popular. And so we cannot wish away the intervention in our democracy in a way that we don't like by simply pretending or accommodating these, infractions. Look, what is at stake here is that the Electoral Commission has a law. Or let me say the country has a law. You have Article 42 of the Constitution that mandates the Electoral Commission, to, and I'm using the words mandate. It mandates the Electoral Commission to make it possible for anybody with sound mind, 18 and above, to get registered. And it is the entitlement. And I'm choosing my words carefully. It is the entitlement of any Ghanaian who is of sound mind and 18 years to have a voter ID. And it is the responsibility. It's a mandate. I mean, the Electoral Commission has been mandated to make that possible. So, because that's their responsibility under Article 42. Then under Article 45E, they are told how to do it. To expand the voter registration process. They themselves, the Electoral Commission, has come to Parliament with a law, a CI, that was approved by the people's representatives, CI 91, in which, under Regulation 22B, they make it clear that to expand voter, registration in this country, they will choose places that are suitable to be used for voting. That is under 22B A.
Yes, that's what we put on the screen earlier.
That to choose a registration center, you should choose a place that can be suitable for elections.
That's it.
On election day. Yes, the suitability of the place for use as a polling station on election day
And the accessibility.
is a consideration. Then B says that it must be accessible to the prospective applicant to register. This is a law that the Electoral Commission itself came to Parliament to get approval to support the operations they are supposed to undertake under 45E of the 1992 Constitution. Nobody forced them to put this in place. Now, the question you ask is, at the district offices in this country, the Electoral Commission district offices, are those offices suitable as polling stations on election day? Obviously, no.
Yeah.
I don't know anywhere in this country where on election day, election takes place at the EC district office. So why go against your own law? Then B, you talk about accessibility. And here, I am tempted sometimes to say that maybe some of our problems are as a result of the number of people who are, you know, in decision making, but have little understanding of the geography of this country. So, to many people in decision making, they are more familiar with Kumasi, Accra, maybe Cape Coast, and probably Ho. They don't really know how inaccessible this country is in many parts, you know, of the various regions. So it comes to some of them as a surprise when you tell them that some people have to travel over 100 kilometers to access their district office. And it is not just about the distance, it is even about the motorability of the roads. In some cases, it is even the crossing of water bodies. I see you want to take a break.
Yes, indeed.
Because I don't want to be interrupted. Maybe when I come, then I can wrap up.
We'll be back shortly after this quick break. This is Keep On. We're live on 3FM 92.7. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.